Hi, my name is Beatrice and I'm a junior. And this is where I live. If you'd look where I live, you'd think my life is pretty much like yours. But if you really knew me, you know there's more to the story. I'm a first-generation immigrant from Brazil, and that means that life in my house can be crazy and chaotic and a little bit unconventional. And for example, we speak Portuguese at my house. So it's not always super easy for my parents to figure out school stuff when it's in a different language. And sometimes at parties and stuff, I feel a little bit out of place and like I don't fit in, and even a little bit marginalized. But one thing I've learned from being in an immigrant family is to just embrace my identity, even if it's not like everyone else's, and to be confident in exactly who God made me to be. Hey, I get it, every family has a story. But you can't really know me until you know what it's like where I live. This isn't just my home. It's part of my story, and it's personal.
We had just returned from a retreat. It had been a long, long bus ride home. Not long because it took us 10 hours, but long because 3 students threw up on the bus. 3! Listen, as I tell you this story, I am already, just give me a moment, gagging from the memory of the smell that no amount of air freshener could ever cover. By the time we got back to the church parking lot, everyone was ready to go home, even me. I was so excited to get home, shower, to take a nap just for 1 second. But I noticed Megan still hanging around the front door of the church. Megan was a junior and had been a longtime member of our youth group. She was super active in the church, even though her parents didn't really come often. I was surprised she didn't have her car at church, and even more surprised she had not bummed a ride home with one of her many friends. So I decided to wait with her. I offered to drive Megan home, but she insisted on waiting for her mom. After an hour of us just talking and waiting, I told Megan, come on, I'll give you a ride home. I could tell she was anxious about me driving her home, though I wasn't sure why. I felt like I knew her pretty well, and in my mind, wasn't sure about why she was so anxious about me taking her home. When we pulled up to Megan's house, the first thing I noticed was a wheelchair ramp. I didn't remember anyone in her family that used a wheelchair, so I asked her about it. And listen, I just was bold in my asking, and immediately she got really quiet. And I regretted asking about it because of how uncomfortable it made her feel. Megan then began to tell me that her dad had a stroke last year and could no longer walk, and I felt super terrible. She told me about how her mom had become his caregiver and how hard life was since her dad couldn't work anymore. And I felt terrible because Megan shared how embarrassed she was that her dad now needed care. And she no longer had friends over to her house because she didn't want anyone to see him like that. I hadn't known any of this before, and I saw Megan on a weekly basis. I sat and I just listened. I had no idea what Megan had been holding on to, what she was going through, and honestly, after that conversation, I realized I barely knew her story. I had no idea what had been happening with her family. I thought I knew Megan, but until I pulled into her driveway to drop her off, until I asked that one question, until I sat and listened, and I really had no idea what she was actually experiencing in her life. I thought I knew her, but I just saw a glimpse of her story. We often assume we know the stories of other people, don't we? We assume we know them just because we know their name, or what they are good at, or what they are into. Many of us confuse following someone on Instagram with actually knowing their story. Their Instagram story is not their personal story. I made that mistake with Megan. I thought I knew her because she came to church every week, but to be honest, I really had no idea about Megan's story. I thought I knew Megan because of the way she acted and the friends she had, but there was so much more to her that I just didn't know about. If we're all being honest, we are all guilty of assuming we know where our friends live. But until we step into their homes, there are pieces of them we may never be aware of. There is so much more to a person than what we see on the outside. Everyone has a backstory we may never know about. We also have a backstory. Each one of us have a story that comes with family dynamics, friends, things that has happened to us, hurts and wounds that we carry, all the good and all the bad things intertwined into the story of our lives. Most of us know our own stories pretty well. In those moments where we might break down and just cry or lash out at a friend in anger, we look for people to understand our stories better in hopes that they can understand us. We say things like, if they only knew the kind of morning that I had. You know, they don't know what I am dealing with at home with my siblings or my parents. I couldn't even sleep at night because I was so worried. I am angry all the time, and I'm not even sure why I'm so angry and mad. This might be true for us, but we forget to think about the steps in the moment when our friends lash out in anger or a family member is rude to us. Y'all all know what that means. Remember, immediately we get upset with them. But have you ever taken a moment to sit back and wonder why they might have snapped at you? We have all had those mornings where you oversleep, spill your coffee down the front of your shirt, that big old stain that just sits right here, and still end up missing the bus. When our day starts like that, we can begin to be victims of our emotions. Giving grace to our friends and our family in these moments is so important, because the reality is this: we never know what they are facing. We rarely try to understand their backstory, and because of that, we miss out on being personal with them and knowing the story of who they are. Over and over in the New Testament, we see Jesus take the time to understand people he met. He took the time to have conversations and share meals with people no one else would even think about spending time with. Jesus looked for the opportunity to get personal with people. We have been talking about a man named Zacchaeus and how Jesus walked into his life. Zacchaeus was not exempt to how Jesus impacted the lives of the people that he interacted with. Let's check it out just for a moment. Think about what Jesus does to try to know Zacchaeus. When Jesus came by, he looked at Zacchaeus and called him by his name. "Zacchaeus," he said, "quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Jesus invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house and took time to enter into Zacchaeus' everyday context. Jesus knew it was risky, but he also knew there was more to Zacchaeus than what everyone in the town thought they understood about this guy. And you can see exactly what everyone thought in this next verse. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. It clearly didn't go over well with some of the people in the town. They were all talking about it. Sometimes we gossip about those people we don't like either. The thing about Jesus is he didn't conform to the world's standards. He was looking to connect with Zacchaeus on a greater level. Jesus didn't care what the townspeople were saying. He wanted to step into the place Zacchaeus was most comfortable. That was his home. It was the place that Jesus knew he could get closer to Zacchaeus and learn more about the man Zacchaeus actually was. Where we live is more than our physical address. Understanding our circumstances and situation is the window into who we really are. There is a part of our story that not everyone gets invited to. But here's the thing: Jesus is God. He already knew Zacchaeus' backstory, but Jesus spending time in Zacchaeus' home makes it all more personal. He was able to connect with Zacchaeus in a way the crowd was not willing to accept. Jesus showed that he wanted to get to know Zacchaeus in a bigger way, to really understand him. And he did it by getting personal and showing up where Zacchaeus lived. When it comes to understanding our own stories and the stories of other people, we can take a look at the life of Jesus as he sought out ways to get personal with people and understand their stories. Take a look at this verse in Philippians. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a servant and was born a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. Jesus stepped into our world as a human. He walked the earth to step into our story, to experience our world and where we live. Jesus made God personal for us. When we read the story of Jesus, he sometimes forget that moments that allow Jesus to understand and connect with our own stories. The same exact moments from your story may not have happened to him, but we can't forget that as a human, Jesus, he was once a baby who cried all night, just like you and I. He had to deal with siblings. He was forgotten by his parents. He experienced loss as one of his best friends died. He questioned his purpose. He dealt with people ridiculing him and doubting him. You know, he knows. He knows the hurt you carry, the worry you have. He knows the doubt you have in him and the things that keep you up at night. He knows your hopes, your dreams, your prayers. He doesn't simply know them. He wants to step into your home, the place that is personal to you. Maybe that's your room. And wants you to know that he doesn't just know your story, he understands it. Here's the truth. It's personal because Jesus understands your story. Since he can understand our story, we can take steps in our lives to connect with him, connect with ourselves, and connect with others. Let's get real for a second. It can be hard to let people into our lives and let people know where you live. It can be easy to hold on to our secrets because we don't want people to judge us. Listen, I get that. We think in our minds about the responses that other people will have about our stories to our lives. So we hold tight to them. Sometimes we can even feel that our stories are too big to handle ourselves. So how can we expect someone else to get it? The beautiful thing is when we can begin to boldly share our stories with other people, it gives them this sense of permission to share their story too. So where do we start? Here are a few ideas. For some of you, your first step is to wrestle with the idea and acknowledge that Jesus knows you, all the pieces of you, and that he wants to step into your story, that he can understand your story, your situation, your emotions, and he loves you. Jesus knew Zacchaeus, all the rumors about his life, how he was the outcast from his community, how people hated him for his job, and how he treated others. Jesus knew that about him, but also knew that there was more to the story of Zacchaeus. Jesus wants to step into your life, wants to get personal with you, just as he did with Zacchaeus. For others, your next step is to let someone else into your story. I know that may be difficult. I don't think it should be some random stranger, but someone you know already, that you know has your back, and someone you want to share your story with. This is a huge step. I know, and I think we all get it. But if you knew that they already cared about you, they were for you and wanted to understand your story more, why not start with letting your small group leader in? That adult that sits and listens to you every week, who shows up here to see you. And here is a secret that I just want to let you all in on. They have their own backstory too. Why not share a little more with your small group? This is just a huge step, but what if you could give the gift of allowing someone to go second by being first to share your story? Talk about your backstory. Allow your group to see who you are when you are not with them. When you share your backstory, you are opening the door for someone else to have the freedom and the courage to also share their backstory. Allowing someone to see who you are behind closed doors can allow you to make connections with people you might have never connected with before. And the thing that makes you feel different could be the thing that connects you with someone else. Then, for others, it is time for you to really understand the story of other people. We have to create safe spaces in our lives to get to know others. We often act like the crowd towards Zacchaeus, how they counted him out. We see what is on the outside, see their actions, and we pass judgment on other people because of it. Maybe it is how someone dresses. You maybe don't like how they look, their reputation, or how they have a different culture than you, or simply because you aren't sure what you both have in common. Take the step to get personal with someone else and understand someone else's backstory. To listen, to actually hear them for who they are. Our lives can change when we allow people to see who we really are, to understand our stories, and even more when we can begin to understand the stories of others. So just as Jesus took the time to go to Zacchaeus' home to understand Zacchaeus' backstory, Jesus wants to be invited into your life too. Jesus wants to understand every part of who we are because our relationship with him is personal. So think about this for just a moment. What would it look like to have others understand your story and for you to understand theirs? We have the opportunity to get personal, to really understand one another and to see how God is moving in the story of our lives.